Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sports Tech Allstars podcast. It's my pleasure this week to bring a friend of mine, Mitch Heath, onto our show. Mitch is the co-founder of Teamworks, one of the largest sports tech companies around. They work with everyone, basically all the A-list teams in the US and across Europe. Mitch, during the episode, talks about his journey as a founder of Teamworks, their early learnings, and what he transfers into his new role as a advisor, mentor, and investor in the sports tech startup community. A fascinating conversation. Hope you enjoy. Right, Mitch, I want you to tell your story first. For an audience who doesn't know you or Teamworks or your role as an investor and all the amazing businesses that you've been a part of, what are all of them? How did you go about, let's say, founding one of the biggest companies in the sports technology space? And what was the journey before that? So walk me through it.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief with my intro because I've been fortunate enough to get to dabble in a lot of the sports industry. I am a co-founder of Teamworks, so that goes back to 2010, got involved at the early stages. And, at the time, sports tech was really early as an industry. There wasn't a lot of investment in the space. There were kind of early entrepreneurs starting to shape the space, but we had a vision that this was an industry that could really slingshot in terms of its technology adoption. And so we put our heads down and started getting to work building what is now the operating system for sport. And so I served as chief operating officer for Teamworks for quite some time up until 2020. In 2020, we were starting to expand globally and said, you know what, we need to get a founder on the ground and really understand international markets and build a blueprint for how we were going to enter sports in the rest of the world. Being an American company founded in the US, we were looking heavily at the UK and Europe, Australia, and then broader to Asia, South America. So I had to wait out the pandemic, but as soon as the borders opened, I did head over and spent a lot of 2021 in Madrid, spent a lot of 2022 in London. Loved that. Got to know the European market. I mean, I fell in love with your football, my soccer, fell in love with rugby, fell in love with cricket, the sports that I didn't get as much exposure to as a kid growing up in the US, but was just really welcomed with arms wide open by the sports community in those markets. In 2023, I moved back to the US and, we had built the team, have a bunch of folks in London, around the UK, have folks in Germany and Spain, built a great team in Australia. And so my kind of chapter of that early build was ready to come to an end, came back to the US and decided it was time to kind of take a step back out of the day-to-day. And so I'm still heavily involved at Teamworks, love the journey we're on, fortunate to be a part of it, will help any way I can serving in my role at Teamworks, but I've also opened up time to start really helping to accelerate the rest of the tech industry in sport. It's something I care about a lot, and I think about when we started Teamworks, there was not a lot of support for tech companies that really had to go seek out great mentors and people with experience to put around us. And I want the next generation of technology companies to be able to come in and do in 2 years what took us 10. So I spend a lot of my time now advising other companies, coaching founders in the space, investing in early stage companies that I believe are promising in terms of their ability to shape the future of the industry. And that is really my core mission, is to bring that next generation of tech forward and bring that next generation of great founders to a point of excellent leadership that's going to shape the industry.
Brilliant. And that's what I want to focus this conversation on, because we've had Teamworks on this pod before. If anybody wants to know more about that company, you can check out one of the other episodes of the other episode. I'll put the links in the show notes. But Mitch, exactly, I want to pick your brain as a founder of a supremely successful sports tech company that's been around the block, really seen it. And now in your, let's say, new capacity, I mean, I know you also operate with Teamworks in various ways, but you've taken on this role, as you mentioned, as a mentor, advisor, investor to sports technology startups. So let's stay on that. What kind of companies do you usually like to work with? I mean, what stage, what level of maturity, pre-revenue, what markets, what topics are you most interested in?
A little bit of all of the above, but I think about where is change and where is disruption in the market. And I look at, one, where are costs getting disproportionately large? That creates an opportunity for efficiency gains. So you think about medical costs, certainly in the US, they're growing a lot faster than other line items in the budget. Um, you think about player pay, particularly at the collegiate level in the US. That's going to change the budgeting exercise and the operating plan for every university athletic department. You think about increases in costs of travel, right? Those are all areas that tech can attack. Tech can say costs are ballooning in these certain areas. If we continue to operate linearly, those costs are going to get out of control, but we can apply tech to move more efficiently here. So I love talking with companies that are taking that approach. Similarly, whenever there are new revenue streams being created, that's a huge opportunity for tech to play a role. So you see tons of new investment in women's sport and other emerging sports. Huge opportunity there. I actually think a lot of those sports that are kind of hitting their growth curve now are going to slingshot some of the traditional leagues in terms of their tech usage, because they can bake that tech into kind of the early building of their infrastructure. You see name, image, and likeness in the US, brand new revenue stream that didn't exist 10 years ago. Tech is going to play a huge role in enabling and accelerating that. You see all kinds of new revenue in media experimentation, right? You've got traditional broadcast, but you have new players entering the broadcast space. You have social media players. You have all kinds of boutique approaches to fan engagement via media. So really cool companies I've gotten to see that are playing a role in that. So maybe a long-winded way of saying, I think about the opportunity as where will the disruption occur? Where are costs getting too high and we can attack that problem, or where are new revenue opportunities being created that tech can accelerate?
I mean, it's a very simple, let's say, distinction, because on one side, it's about operational efficiency and how we can deliver sports better. And I think that's a big part of, let's say, what Teamworks has been doing, right? So quick word for somebody who doesn't know the company they work with. We're 95% of the NFL, 90% of the Premier League, 90% of the NBA, blah, 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 right? So you guys are in everywhere delivering better, efficient solutions for sports teams. So anything around cost side, you obviously have a wealth of experience. On the revenue side is the big opportunity, right? That's what everybody's looking like. What is driving sports forward? What is the next big thing? And that is, let's say, the million, billion, $1 trillion, maybe not trillion, but we can skip that one. Maybe, you don't know. But that is that big revenue figure question. Before we talk about that, before we talk about, hey, actually, what are those areas specifically that you especially like to focus on? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about some companies that you've been working with, some projects that you've been a part of, I know it's hard to pick your favorite kid and all that, and it's not something that you want to do. But let's just say highlight a couple of companies that you've helped around over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I joined the board of two that I'm particularly excited about. I joined the board of Monarch Sport now over 2 years ago. So I've gotten to work with them closely and love the founders. Just a great team that just brilliant folks. But they are really changing the way American football is being trained. They have a robotic quarterback that a wide receiver or someone returning kicks can go out, practice with this robotic quarterback or punter. And it's unbelievable. If you go through Chicago, or if anyone is listening to this that goes through Chicago, you need to go try this out. It's a lot of fun, but I think they have just a huge opportunity to bring tech into a space that has been very manual historically, right? You and I need to go out and throw a ball together. It takes two people, and that's not just an American football problem. That exists in every sport. I also joined the board of HeadCheck Health. They are the experts in concussion management. And while there's a lot of investment going into concussion prevention, right? Companies doing helmets and mouth guards, and that's fantastic. We need to keep pouring money into that effort. There is not as much expertise being applied to what happens after the injury. And that's where HeadCheck specializes. And they'll share the stats that X% of concussions don't get recognized or don't get treated correctly and then have long-term effects on that athlete or that individual. And so they are attacking the problem with tech from the industry on, making sure we recognize it correctly, making sure that person gets the immediate treatment they need, and then, having baseline measurements and the ability to track how that athlete's doing over time. That one I'm excited about because I think that is moving very, very quickly into a must-have for every contact sport, right? I think the days of an American football team or a football/soccer team or a rugby team not having a concussion solution, the market's not going to let them do it that much longer. So it's moved from kind of a new science, we're still figuring it out 5 years ago, to now the science is clear. We know we need a solution, and HeadCheck is positioned to be the leader in that.
I mean, the NFL has been putting a good amount of money into this as an area of research, including backing some of the companies themselves, either through equity, through capital, whatever the case may be, or just through media, through the association with the NFL. That certainly helps. So it's a topic that is, let's say, very top of mind, certainly at the NFL, but as you mentioned at the end, a growing topic across the sports world. I mean, head injury is a big thing, and certainly in European football, and increasingly will continue to be. All right, cool. So we covered a couple of companies. We covered the new roles that you operate in. I want to come back to, let's say, your journey as the founder, and then how that translates, and those learnings translate to the companies that you work with now. For example, with Teamworks, of course, through those early years, nobody knew really what sports tech was. I don't even know if that term was widely used in 2010 or around that time. We certainly came on the market, or we've been tracking the market since 2014, came on the market in 2016-17. It was just about on the radar then. What were the maybe 2 or 3 biggest learnings that you had through your early journey, which you pass on to these early stage founders?
Well, I think one thing we got right was focus. And I don't say that as, we had a brilliant idea. I think we just had an instinct that we can't do it all, and we've got to be really good at what we do. And we use the phrase, keep the main thing the main thing. Early on in our journey, we had all kinds of people in our ears saying, you've built operational software, you've built communication software, you've built efficiency tools, you've built collaboration tools, and sports isn't big enough. It's not a big enough market. You need to go sell this to banking and healthcare and all kinds of other industries and take a horizontal approach. And that's the only way that your market size is going to be big enough to build a real company. And we fundamentally disagreed with that. And maybe it was because we were stubborn and in our young 20s, but we said we think sports is a real business and there's a real opportunity here. And if we go after all these other industries, we're going to run out of money in 2 weeks. So very early on, we said we're going to take an extremely disciplined approach. We're going to focus just on sport. And in fact, at the time, we were focused just on collegiate sport in the US, really just collegiate football. Investor would say, blow up your TAM, go after a huge market. We said, no, in our first year, we're only going after 120 Division I football teams. That's our goal. And that will give us the launching pad, the beachhead to then go into other sports, go into the professional ranks, eventually move internationally. And so we have, at Teamworks, kind of unpeeled the onion that is the sports industry layer by layer in a very focused, disciplined way. And even still today, we'll say there might be a market that we believe has potential, but if we don't have the resources ready, if we're not ready to hire the team, if we're not ready to deliver the product in a way that's going to serve that market segment the right way, which for us means protecting our reputation, making sure the client's getting great value, making sure they renew. I mean, we're not in the business of selling something to a client for 1 to 3 years and then being done. We're building partnerships that are going to last 20, 50, 100 years. And if we're not ready to do that right in the market, we won't enter that market yet. So that's something I preach a lot with the companies I'm working with now. What's your true focus? What are you going to deliver on? And what is your standard of excellence that you're going to demand that you meet when you enter that segment of the market? And I think it's really, really hard, right? Because they, just as we did, they have investors who want a bigger opportunity or a bigger picture to be painted for them. And of course, everybody has big dreams and big ambitions, and they shouldn't put those aside. but I say all the time, a lot of companies that don't make it, I actually don't think it's that they had a bad strategy. I think it's that they got their order of operations wrong. And maybe they tried to do too much at once, or they tried to launch a product or enter a market they weren't ready for. And the strategy might not have been bad, but the timing was.
Fair. Focus. That's a big one. I mean, it's the analogy I always use for that one is like, the best restaurants have the smallest menus.
Yeah.
Like they really just, and usually you'll know that place for that one thing. It's not that you'll know everything on that menu. So really, especially in the early days, that focus really helps. So focus is a big one. Anything else? I want at least one more, because I really think that this is the kind of stuff that startup founders can hear and often hear from different people. But when they hear it from another founder who's really walked that path and been on that journey, then it has a lot more value. So focus is a big one. Can you give me another?
Particularly in this market, I look at where do you spend your money? And a lot of companies will spend on growth, on marketing and sales, because that's where the pressure is, and they need to produce revenue numbers, and that's for good reason. However, in sport, this is a tight networked community. And so we, at Teamworks, we took the approach that we were going to overspend on customer success, customer support, and on the product. And we believe that if we deliver the best-in-class product and we deliver great service around it to help people use that product, the sales and marketing would take care of themselves. And so I think we didn't hire our first salesperson till employee number 11. And, over time, our marketing and sales teams grew, but even, deep in 8 years into the company, we still had investors saying, you're spending way too much on customer success and not nearly enough on marketing and sales. And our, again, stubborn position was, if we do that right, our customers are the marketing and sales, right? They will talk, word of mouth will spread. I think this is an industry where people do talk. And if you do a great job, the word will get around. If you do a bad job for one person, the word will get around. And so I work with a lot of these companies on, how are you thinking about referrals? How are you thinking about word of mouth? How are you getting one client to share their great experience or their use case with another potential client? That is far more powerful than any, advertisement you can put together or marketing piece you're going to put up on LinkedIn. That organic network still really matters. And the companies that are finding creative ways to leverage that are going to accelerate with not nearly as much spend in marketing effort.
I can testify to that. I was at an event at Sports Innovation in Düsseldorf earlier this year, which is the event run by the DFL. And I attended a Teamworks mini event, like one of the side events before the main conference. And I remember it was Chelsea and Arsenal, existing customers who I guess maybe you already invited to the event or whatever, but it was clear that sure, you've invited a client and they'll speak positively about you because you'll only invite a good client. But I think that it was really interesting to see that the conversation that they were having was like, no, we're happy to be here and happy to talk about this solution because we found the value. So often it's that successful client can not only become advertising, they can be an evangelist because they really want to show that, hey, we did something good. Like they want to showcase that they're a champion of a good product as well. It really helps them with the PR. So it's not just that they're helping you out of the kindness of their heart. No, it's in their interest as well to come out and talk about you positively if you deliver well.
And you want to set them up to be the expert because they are. So whether it's Teamworks or any other solution, it's not about advertising Teamworks. It's about, how do you operate? How do you handle your player performance data model? How do you handle injury management? How do you handle your nutrition operation, right? And those things all might point to the Teamworks products they're using. Or how do you handle concussion management post-injury? That might point to Check. How do you handle training? That might point to Monarch. How do you handle injury recovery? That might point to Protect 3D. There's a number of good solutions out there, but I think for those companies, as opposed to asking a customer to do an advertisement for you or go out and do a testimonial, it's more go out and talk about how great your operation is.
Yeah.
And if we're a part of that, mention it, right? That's a best practice that other folks can learn from.
Yeah, exactly. Make your customer look like a star, and that'll certainly help you. Brilliant. Okay, focus on your customer. Some really good tips there, Mitch. Let's switch tracks a bit. I want to talk about the opportunities. We spoke about it a bit earlier. The cost side and the revenue side are, let's say, but those two giant areas for any business or any industry to look at. What within those are special, like specific trends or anything that catches your eye that either you're looking for a company that's an area that I'm already in, or when those topics come across your table, like you're especially interested?
I think one we should talk about is kind of the personalized health movement and the democratization of tech in sport, but also in the general population. I think it's one that it's become really popular because it's a way to open up a huge market, right? If there is something that is a technology that maybe only professional athletes were using, or maybe only the military or other kind of high performance environments, but there's a way to bring that tech to the broader market, right? Think about the Apple Watch, think about Whoop, think about blood glucose monitoring, think about MyFitnessPal, right? Tools that it's not that they were replacing a competitor. It's stuff that the general population or your everyday athlete were simply not using and not able to leverage that value. And maybe even in kind of the most basic scenarios or examples, right? Think about computers, right? Before 1980, computers were incredibly expensive and lived in, a government building or NASA, and we paid thousands upon thousands of dollars. But then by 1995, every family had a desktop or a laptop, and a PC or Mac was trying to be in every home. Same thing's happening in sport, where I think we're undergoing this wave of saying, okay, we've started to develop these great technologies in a lab, and maybe we've applied them to NBA players or Premier League players. Maybe we've applied them in the military or other spaces. How can that help everybody? How can we increase sports participation, increase health outcomes, give people more data in their pocket in the case of wearables? I think you're going to see more of that. And so I would, if I'm an entrepreneur looking at where can I make a difference in the market, I might start there. I might say what tech is limited to a select few, and that tech something that would provide value to a much larger section of society.
Yeah, fair. I mean, again, something that we talk about in different ways. The simple GPS tracker that was measuring movement, how many kilometers you ran, how fast you ran, et cetera, et cetera. Now you can buy that device for about $150 on Amazon. And there are various brands that do it really well. You want massage guns and cryo pants and all these kind of things, which only Michael Jordan, maybe not even every NBA athlete at that time was using. It was only the elite of the elite. Then it got to every player. Now again, Hyperice sells those for a couple $100, $500, depending on how much you want to spend. Like if you think you really want to invest in your body or your kid who might be a promising athlete, whatever, there's a lot of really cool tech out there. Cool. Okay, so democratized access to technology. That's an interesting one. Anything else?
I'd look at how do players make money, the athletes themselves, right? So we briefly mentioned player pay in the U.S. for collegiate athletes, but look at endorsements, right? Endorsements going back 10, 20 years came pretty traditionally, right? You're doing a TV ad, you're doing a pretty templated, there's a blueprint for how an athlete can endorse a brand, and they sign, their agent works that deal, they sign a contract, they go endorse the brand. Today, you've got athletes promoting brands on social, you've got more organic, it might be thought leadership, it might be a public appearance, right? There's all kinds of different ways that brands are thinking about how can we leverage the persona of this athlete, or the brand value or the respect of this athlete within broader society. I think you're going to see more and more of that. I think tech can play a role in getting those deals done, right? How do we connect the athlete? I think tech can streamline a lot of the kind of legal negotiation logistics of that deal. But I think it's up to the marketers and the brands to say, let's get creative. How do we plug this person in a way that the market will respond to?
Or just in the measurement. The tech is a big role in how you measure the performance of that activation or that deal that you have struck, and you go from there. The only one other comment I'll add to that one is that, of course, this is part of a rising trend that we're seeing athletes and how they commercialize, but they commercialize also as investors. So they want to be part of the endorsement, but not just to get paid, but maybe a bit of equity, or maybe they become a founder themselves and they're actually said being a part of incorporating the company. And like, this is a part of a huge wave that, again, you're seeing at the elite level, but with NIL, with some of the other stuff that you mentioned, you're going to see this across the value chain. And if I can be an athlete who makes maybe a million or 2 million, which is a lot of money, at playing for some top college, and I can then go in, like, find the right brand that speaks to my market in Texas or whatever else, and then really make that ecosystem work, I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities. Okay, cool. I like that one as well. So opportunities around monetizing athletes, around the individual themselves. How do you look for these opportunities? How do you come across them? Is there just, are you talking to people a lot? Are you scanning databases? Are you reading newsletters? What do you do?
No magic list. It's a lot of networking, and it's a lot of
Yeah.
relying on the voices in the industry, right? If a team or a league or anyone across the sports industry has tried a new tool or has come across a new technology and they share that with me, I'll go do the research. I've really enjoyed working with founders that come from non-business backgrounds, and so I think you'll see a lot of innovation that maybe it's coming out of a sports team, maybe it's coming out of a university lab, maybe it's coming out of a private research facility, but you have people that maybe they don't have a marketing or sales or business background, but they're actually engineers or they're scientists or they're researchers of some sort. And they're a PhD in their area of specialty and they come up with a new innovative way to attack a problem. And then maybe it's someone like me or others in the industry can help them think about, how do we monetize that? How do we bring that to market? How do we provide that as a service that everyone can use so it doesn't just sit on the shelf in a lab? But I love that profile of founder because they come in with deep knowledge and a deep passion for their area of expertise. And then they have the passion and the motivation to say, I want everyone to benefit from this thing I've come up with. How do I make that happen?
Brilliant. And how does that founder find you? What is the best way to reach out? I mean, if there's somebody's listening to this podcast, on your website, on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I've got my website. Anyone's welcome to visit mitchheath.com. Just for an overview of me and kind of how I can help different founders and different companies. But certainly LinkedIn and certainly just through the network, right? Anybody that happens to get connected with me via someone they already know in the space. I get quite a bit of outreach just from people saying, hey, I'm looking to get involved in sports tech. I have an idea, or I've just launched a company. Can I get your thoughts? And I'm always happy to have those conversations.
And if I can give a little plug for myself, I've known Mitch a while. I think we met again on the event circuit. I believe it was in Lausanne or no, I think, Lausanne, wasn't it? We met at a conference and we have stayed connected ever since because I've always found you to be a thoughtful, valuable point of reference for anything that even as Sports Tech X we're trying to achieve. So I've always appreciated your inputs. Mitch, what is coming up for you over the next 12, 18 months that you want to talk about, that you want to share?
Well, right now I'm taking a breather and enjoying the holidays, and I'm going to coast to the end of the year. But next year should be a busy one. I'll continue to get involved with startups. We will continue to push forward to Teamworks. But no specific individual thing that I'm my time into. Mostly just that mission that I said. How do we keep accelerating? Right, it's an exciting time in sport, and particularly being back in the U.S. with the World Cup coming up and LA 28 coming up, it's going to be exciting times in my part of the world. So looking forward to being involved in all of the above.
Yeah, it's a fun time to be in the sports industry, especially if you're a fan of sports. So, Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time. Before I let you go, because I like to believe we're all sports fans first, I want to know what has been your favorite sporting moment?
Gosh, well, I just came back from London and got to be at Twickenham for Australia. England. I'm sorry the English won't love me saying it because the Australians pulled off an upset that wasn't expected, but fantastic match. But my all-time favorite, so it's interesting being around sport. I interact with athletes and coaches all the time, and I don't get too starstruck. They're human beings, and we're there to help. But where I get starstruck are the historical figures, the people that have just shaped the world, honestly, not just the world of sport. And I got the opportunity to meet Willie Mays at the Giants spring training. I don't remember how many years ago now, probably, let's call it 2014, 2015, maybe. And Willie Mays came out and all the guys are out there, doing their early season training. And he goes out and he's an older guy at this point. He doesn't see that well. He's not walking on his own that well anymore, but he wanted to be there. That was an annual tradition for him. And he meets everybody. Then he goes out on the field and spends the day talking trash to all the pitchers and telling them that if they had thrown that curveball, he would have hit it 450 to center field. And so you have a 90-year-old man just sitting on the side of the field, letting them know what would have happened if they were playing in his day. And I love that. I love that he was still had that edge to him.
Brilliant. Love that. I mean, especially when you talk about the historical figures in sports, as you said, the people who made a difference in Billy Mays. I mean, I'm not a huge baseball fan, so I can't say that I know him in and out, but when you know that name of somebody who's made a difference as a athlete of color coming up in a time where it was hard for them to do that and to be in that way. So, no, great. Good one, Mitch. As always a pleasure to speak to you, my friend. Wish you all the best. Hope to see you around in the circuit some more. And we'll be in touch. Thanks for taking the time.
Appreciate it, Ron. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for another episode. We're continuing our series of speaking to thought leaders, investors, people who are driving the change in the sports tech industry, all in the back of our latest VC report, which was just published a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't downloaded it, go over to our website and do just that. Hope you enjoyed the episode. See you next week. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Tech Allstars podcast with Rohan Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out sportstechx.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, SportsTechDB, at sportstechdb.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.